Was signed in a little early. We'll just wait a few minutes. Let me know you're here. I'm glad we got on this time. I have no idea what happened the other day. It took 45 minutes to get on. We'll just wait a couple more minutes. See if we get a few more people. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. I did a session with Wes Jansen and Darren Stringer the other night, and it was like it started at 11 p.m. my time. I guess it was probably their time. It was more like 2 o'clock in the afternoon or so. But for me, it was 11 p.m. and it went till 1 a.m. and it was a lot of leg work, a lot of moving and bouncing on the legs, and my poor old calf muscles just reminded me why there are certain things you can't do at certain age. But boy, it was fun. We had lots and lots of fun, and Darren Stringer and Wesley are doing fantastic work there. I'll see if I've got their link. I think I have a link to them doing something. Try that link, but I don't really have a link to everything they do. Horse Daniel, good to see you, buddy. Always good to have you aboard. Raj, namaste. Thanks for coming all the way from Nepal. Today I'm going to talk about Kata and Bunkai in Kata. Rochelle, good to see you. Thanks for coming. I've got a whole new section in my upcoming book. I don't mean the Budo Karate Masayama. I've got a new book coming out. Us, Mike, good to see you. Is it? Yeah, it was being blowy here. The other night it was down to 4 degrees. Well, they say it was 5 degrees, felt like 4, but it felt like 2. Us, Patty, good to see you. I've got a few links here. I've got so many. There's Paddy, you see there, you see the Kyokushin Shuffle. That's my buddy Paddy Pinto. He does the Kyokushin Shuffle, which is an online interview thing. He does some great interviews, and he's really doing a good job. And you know, if you want to do a good job, you like to share the love. So that's a link there to an interview he did with Nick Pettis. Nick Pettis was one of Solsai's, if not Solsai's last Uchideshi. Very enlightening interview. But good on you, Pat, doing great work. And you know, it's. I think sometimes what happens is when you go online, you don't want to share things. You don't want to talk about other people. You'll see someone do something, and you don't necessarily think they're doing a really good job, or you do think they're doing a good job, but you don't want to mention them because you think it's going to minimize yourself, which is the stupidest thing in the world. I think the more love you share, the more it comes around. You know. So anyway, have a look at Patty's link there, and Mike Clark. Those who've been coming will be familiar with Mike. He's a regular, and I'm really proud of that because I'm very honoured to have him. He's written a number of great books, but that is a link to his book on Shingi Tai, which is a really good insight for everyone. Paul Kniep, good on you, all the way from Germany, one of my Patreon family. And, you know, I just want a bit of a shout out to my Patreon family. It's going really well. We've got some new members. Phil over in UK. Welcome aboard, Phil. Torbjorn, my buddy from Norway. I train with Torbjorn once a year over in Norway, and he's a great guy, and he's got a really good, solid karate mind. He's constantly seeking the right answers. You know, we'll talk a little bit about that today. You know, Solsai often said that if you train hard enough, the answers will come to you, or understand these techniques that I'm bringing, then your answers. It actually gives you the right questions too, because you can have a technique. For example, you can be doing a movement out of a kata, and that's your answer. You just don't know what the question is. You know, you go, what is that? You know, and that is what it is. You know, it's like block down, block up. Then you take that. You know, what is that? Well, you don't know the question. So often I find that experience in training, you know, they talk about gokui, or the secrets of karate. Well, the secrets of karate come through your experience. And what your experience is having worked out the right questions, not necessarily the right answers, because, I think the right answers only come from the right questions. So, Torbjorn, it's fantastic. I really appreciate you joining my Patreon family. Luciano Paparelli, thank you very much, buddy. Luch, get in touch with me, Luciano. I'm sending out emails to all my Patreon family very soon. Alan Lloyd, welcome, buddy. But Alan is also from New Zealand, and I really appreciate Alan. He's been coming along to our sessions here as well, but he's actually joined the Patreon family. So, have a think about that. If you got Nick. Oh, Paddy's got Nick as well. Well, see, that interview there with Nick Pettis was on the Kyokushin. I'm sorry, I think that was the Kyokushin, the martial way, wasn't it? That's Scotty in Canada. Paddy's just telling me he's got Nick this weekend. How cool is that? That's fantastic. It'll be a great interview. Everyone, just keep an eye out for the Kyokushin Shuffle there. Let me see if I have got it. Did I put a link up for you, Paddy? If I didn't, I should have. That's an old joke. Hands up, everyone who does Kyokushin. Limp over there, so everyone shuffles because of the sore legs, Chrissy Dunn. I've known Chrissy. In fact, I was in the Chrissy Dunn there. I was in the other room waiting when Chrissy was born. And I heard his cries when he was the second he was born. So Chris and I go back a fair way. Rob De Souza, good to see you from Tassie. Rodney Whippenar from Africa via Sydney. Good to see you, buddy. Thank you. Yes, the Tao Te Ching. Now there's a book and a half. If you know anyone who understands it, let me know. I mean, that's the thing, though. And Frederick from Sweden, thanks for coming, buddy. That's the thing, about asking the right questions. Often all the answers are in this religion. Come on, join me. Come to church. All the answers. Well, all the answers for that person might be there, and all the answers for you at the time that you need them might be in the kata. But the more you dig into it, you have to look for the right questions to get the right answers. And today I just wanted to look at some kata and some bunkai. It's hard to do bunkai when I'm by myself, but I want to talk about it. I want to talk what it means, and I want to discuss with you how you can. I've got some great ideas about how to apply kata training and get the bunkai questions and answers right. Okay, I want to talk about that as well. Do a bit of a warm up. I think today. Rod Whippenar said he wanted to do the entire deck of cards. Yeah, sorry, Rod. We're going to have to pull back a little bit, but I will shuffle up. I've been practicing my shuffling. Well, that's pretty good. Let me do it so you can see. Now, this is bound to go everywhere now. There you go. Well, I've shuffled them up, so I'm going to peel. How many? Rod said 10, actually. So let me peel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 for fun, 13. Let's go 13. That's a quarter of a deck. So we'll do a quarter of a deck today because after that, I am going to be sitting down and talking a fair bit about Bunkai. And I really, really believe that I have some great ideas and approaches to Bunkai. I remember there's a teacher of Funakoshi, Anko Itosu. Anko Itosu was, he was a great leader in the karate world in Okinawa. And he has written a thing called, which is now called Itosu Jukun, which means Itosu's 10 precepts of karate. And I was very interested in it, and I went online and I was looking for a translation that I liked. I wasn't looking for a translation that agreed with what I was looking for. I was looking for a translation which I thought was accurate enough in little ways. I spoke to a number of people. There's a fantastic Kata Bunkai teacher in England named Ian Abernethy. I've never met him, and we got close to catching up when I was over in Wales for a seminar, but we did talk a fair bit. We exchanged emails for a while because I was discussing with him this Ankoi Tosu's 10 precepts. That's a link to Ian Abernethy's book. It's a great insight into Bunkai. Ian pretty well spends his whole life traveling the world, imparting to people his concepts of Bunkai and so on, and some great stuff. But I was talking to him about the Anko Tosu, and he had a professional translator translate the Itosu Jukun, the Itosu's 10 precepts. And unfortunately, sometimes I know from experience where a professional translator is really good at translating, but they may not have familiarity with karate. So sometimes there's a line between what needs to be translated or not. So if someone says, this is Seiken Chudanski, well, everyone who does karate knows Seiken Chudanski, but that translator doesn't realize that. So he goes, this is a correct fist, middle attack, strike, and it becomes confusing. Well, I think this is what happened when Ian got a professional translator, and obviously they're professional, otherwise they wouldn't have a ticket. But if they don't have familiarity with karate. So anyway, I had a word to him, and I've translated my own, and I've put it in my new book. But one of the things that is really important that Itosu said was, he pointed out in there, let me see if I've got it here. He basically said, look, that you have to recognize, because what he did is he wanted to popularize karate, and he realized that you can't go out to a system and recommend to the teachers that they teach the grade 6 or 7 or 8 kids how to poke out eyes and how to bite necks and how to put thumbs in throats and fish hook and all the really, really bad techniques of karate. So they were basically hidden. So, the spear hand in the eye was changed to a fist to the chest, or the neck guillotine crank was changed to an augmented block and things like this. So the techniques were there. They were just hidden so that they became more accessible to people, And Itosu basically said that you first have to determine, I'm reading this, you first have to determine if your karate will be aimed at training the body for physical benefits or developing skills for realistic practical application. So they're both there, and they're both valid. Some people have no desire whatsoever to poke an eye out, and they're going to go and put themselves in a situation realistically where they will. Others need it in their day-to-day life. Some people approach kata for competition. All they want to do is win a kata tournament. So for them, they can stop at that point where it doesn't really matter to them the deeper meaning of the bunkai and so on. So I'm going to go through a few of these things today. If I have time, it's already 10 minutes past. Let's do a little bit of a stretch, a warm-up, and we'll hit the 13 cards. I peeled them straight off. I hope there's some biggies there because I haven't had a chance to do my deck of cards today. I slept in. Okay, so I'll get back to this kata stuff later on. Let's go and have a bit of a warm-up. My legs are sore. I've been sitting in Seiza the whole time. Thanks for joining me. Ich, ni, san, chi, go, hanta, ich, ni, san, chi, go, squatting. Ich, ni, san, chi, ich, ni, san, chi, san, ni, san, chi, ni, san, chi. Let gravity hang down. Hips, ich, ni, san, hanta, ich, ni, san, double shoulder width, right hand twist,
Hitch, knee, son, knee, go, look, hitch, touch, Q, Q, knee, she, go, look, hitch, Q, and Jew. Down the middle, hitch, knee, son, knee, son, knee, she, knee, son, bend the right leg. I need to stretch. Push the hips forward. Right around, toes in the air. Try to get your calf muscle on the ground. Bunkai. The other side. Hitch. Knee. Sun. Oh, that feels so good. Shikodachi. Knee down, left shoulder in. Bunkai. Nice and deep, both arms. Head up. Shikobumi. Knee. Sun. She. Go. I have trouble with my balance on the right knee. Look. Pitch. Good. Leg straight again. Pull to the right. Then the left. Oh, that was the left. My other right. Take the toes. Pull the head straight down. And coming up, arms, hitch, knee, san, shi, hanta, hitch, knee, san, shi, oi. Migi, san, shin, dachi, oi. Yep. Mawashi, uke, hitch, knee, san, to the left, right, go, behind, look, hitch, punch. It's good to do that in the warm-up because if you're a beginner, it teaches you the technique. If you're a teacher, it'll teach your students the technique by the time they need it. You need that technique for kata at about green belt level. Okay? Let's go straight into the deck of cards. So we're only doing a quarter. Remember, we just don't have time to do the whole deck. If you want to do the whole deck, knock yourself out. And you know, if you're in your 20s or if you're a teenager in your 20s, super fit, well then what you could do is
in the time that it takes me to say do if there's 7 or 10 or whatever. And if we're doing burpees and I'm going too slow for you, knock yourself out. Just keep going. And when I stop, stop. We used to do that in the dojo. What we do is we do the basics, and then after the basics, we do 30 burpees. But not everyone in the dojo finishes the burpees at the same time. So what we do is whoever finished the 30 first, whoever finished first, we'd all stop at that time. Okay? So you can do that if you want. If I'm too slow for you, knock yourself out. Let's all stop and start together. Okay, let me just put them there. 13 cards today, so it's only a quarter of a deck. Let's go. Oh, straight away. 5 of hearts. I didn't even look at it. 1. 5 burpees. 2. All right, you've got to do double, buddy. You should be doing 10. 4. 5. Rod was an Uchideshi with Masayama for 8 months and is a student of Kenny at Bogart. Queen, spades, 12 push-ups. Let's go. Itch, knee, sun, knee, go, look, itch, touch, go, itch, knee. Next one. 6 clubs. Ready? Itch, knee, sun, knee, go. Next one. 3 hearts, 3 burpees. Itch. Knee. Sun. Next one. 10 spades, 10 push-ups. Itch. Knee. Sun. Knee. Go. Look. Itch. Touch. Kill. Yeah. Next one, 8 diamonds. That's 8 sit-ups. Touch, knee, thumb, hip, up, look, pitch, touch, kill, do. Next one, 3 spades. So, from sitting position to get up in a push-up position, remember, cross your feet, rock forward, and kick your legs back. Knee, some. Next one, 10 clubs, 10 squats. Pitch, knee, some, 3, go, look, pitch, touch, jump, do. Next one, 8 spades, 8 push-ups. Pitch, hey, turn, hey, go, look, pitch, touch. Next one, 10 of hearts. Bound to have some biggies there. 10 burpees. Let's go. Pitch, knee, some, shake, go, touch, jump, do. Next one, 8 diamonds. That's 10 sit-ups. Ready, big, some, big, go, look, pitch, touch, jump, do. 4 clubs. Okay, so from sit-up position to get up with no hands. Remember, pendulum, tuck, push the hips. Ready, 4 squats. Itch, knee, some, peasy. 2 diamonds, 2 sit-ups. Itch, knee. And there you have it. So that's a quarter of a deck. Good luck. I'll see you in a sec. Alan, good to see you, buddy. That took it out of me. Alan's just joined us. I mentioned the new Patreon family members. Alan's one of them. Appreciate you coming along, Alan. Good on you, Clarence. You just got here in time for the deck of cards. Rodney Whippenar wanted to do a whole deck, but I didn't have time. So he's probably still doing them while we're all getting a drink. I wanted to discuss Bunkai today, which is due out at the end of the year, not the Budo Karate Masayama. Yeah, there, Rod. How can you be doing the deck of cards and typing on your keyboard at the same time? Impossible. Unless you're doing those push-ups one-armed. That's pretty cool. Okay, so I took the section on Kata and Bunkai out of my book and I cut it back. Okay, and this is just really the main parts out of it, and it's 11 A4 pages. I'm not going to get through it, but I really, really want to talk about it because it's so important and so valuable, you know, because a lot of people minimize Kata. They look at Kata and they don't understand. And when they look at 90% of the Kata done in the world, I fully get it. They're horrible. And some people have twisted and changed those Kata to, I think, you know, I was asked to judge a Kata tournament once, and two competitors in a row did such horrible Kata. And to them, it must have been good because they were doing as their instructor taught them. But from my viewpoint, from the Japanese viewpoint of waza no kankyu, iki no chosei, chikara no kyojaku, all the important points, the line, the sen, the posture, the correct fist, the correct technique, how to use your hips, the good kia, all that stuff didn't even exist. And this girl's come out and done a Kata, and it was such a horrible mess. I gave her a really low score, but everyone gave her big scores. And that was the second time in a row it happened. So I just put the number sheet down on the seat, and I bowed and I started to walk off. And a lady came up and went, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, there's no point in me being here. It's obvious that Koshi, early Shotokan teacher, he trained with Ankoi Tosu. And he was saying how he trained with Ankoi Tosu every day for 10 years and only learned 3 Kata." Okay. And so, and Salsa used to talk about in the early days, it was 3 years for the grip, 3 years for the stance, and 3 years for the punch. So it was nothing to spend 9, 10 years just working on Taikyoku 1, 2, and 3, let's say. Funakoshi said that he learned the Naihanshin 1, 2, and 3. Learned 3 Kata in 10 years. You think, and these days, you can't do that. People leave bored. But the point is, if you really take it seriously, if you think about Kata and the depth of Kata, and you take the 20 techniques of any Kata and ask yourself, do you know inside out, back to front, so that you can not only explain what they mean, but explain the possibilities and the options available to it, and then explain how you'd use it under pressure against a non-compliant opponent whose objective is to hurt you. Okay, that's your golden rule all the time. Would this work against a non-compliant opponent whose objective is to hurt you, you know? That's what you have to ask. And if you analyze it like that, and if you're serious, you take just one Kata, you know, maybe it's Pinan 4. You take that one Pinan 4 and ask yourself seriously, would you be able to 100% analyze and explain that entire Kata to the nth degree? And if that became your goal, well, then it would take 9 years, you know, it would take many years, because there are certain Kata that I've been working on, and they can be just two particular moves, and it just escapes me. No matter how many times I practice it over and over and over and over, I know there's something deeper that I'm missing out on. And Rod there says, Sosai recommends specializing in 3 Kata. It's true. I recommend 2 Kata. The Kata you need right now for your current grade, and the Kata that is most important to you. If you're doing any more than 2 Kata, if you're trying to seriously go deep with any more than 2 Kata, or in as Rod said, 3, maximum 3, well then I think you're kind of exaggerating it. There's too much in it. If you want to do it superficially, even look at people who compete in Kata tournaments, they'll analyze the range of Kata they're allowed to use, and they'll focus on just 2 or 3 of those Kata. You know, and if you go online, look at some of these incredible, well, they do the same Kata over and over, and you could watch them do it one day and exactly the same as them doing the same kata on another day. It's, they've got it mastered. So, if you think that spending all those years on one kata is too much, well, then it just depends on how deep you want to take it. Okay. I'm just going to go through some of these notes, but as I said, Unko Itosu, who wrote those, the Karate 10 Precepts of Karate, and I've got them in my book, and I may even do a reading of it in one of my live sessions one day. It's very, very interesting. But he said that the focus of the school curriculum for teaching karate in the schools was using kata as an exercise for health. And that's like Tai Chi. Some people just do nothing but Tai Chi, have incredible timing and everything so that they can analyze and take it very deeply in a real situation. But 99.99% of the population don't have that in Tai Chi. They don't have that ability to do that. And it's the same with kata. 99.9% of the people who practice karate, kata today have no idea how to apply that kata in a real situation against a non-compliant opponent whose objective is to hurt you. Okay, Mike, if people don't understand the principle of kata, a kata is speaking about, all you're left with is a movement. Yeah, well, look, I in here, that's a good point. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so, I teach karate in 4 steps. Ian Abernathy, the guy I mentioned earlier, who wrote that fantastic book on Bunkai. I think the book's called Bunkai Jutsu. He also groups kata training into 4 stages, all right? And he says, if you train karate in this way, it'll work. And these 4 stages, he talks about learn the solo form, the techniques that make up the kata and the kata itself as it is normally trained. Well, that's what Mike Clark is saying there. If you don't understand the kata, all you're left with is the movements. Well, you stop at level 1. It's that simple, Then he says, learn and train the bunkai applications of the techniques in the kata, especially through 2-man drills. Bunkai is a bunkai sutta. The verb bunkai means to break down, to compartmentalize, if you like. But in the West, we use bunkai to mean applications. Is this another word for applications, really? Okay, so learn and train the bunkai applications of the techniques, okay, through 2-man drills. Now, he says, 3rd step is identify methods that provide a gateway. Okay, now I have another 4th step. I have my own, which is very similar to that. And I discovered Ian's book once I started to write my own, this current book that I'm publishing. And my 4 steps were a little bit different to his, but they're very similar. I'll probably get onto my 4 steps a little later. In fact, I should look for them now and do it. So here's my 4 steps, okay? And learn the moves of the kata, including the footwork, the ki, the balance, timing, points of power stress. That is where it's slow and tense and where it's fast and powerful. Okay, that's the 1st step. 2nd step is understand the correct and effective use of the techniques. Okay, so you don't have to get too funky here. A punch is a punch, a block is a block. And all you need to understand at a certain level is how to do that correctly. Like Sosai says, know what you're hitting with, where you're hitting to, how you're hitting. Well, that's what that means. It means to understand the correct and effective use, the application of those techniques without going too deep into it. And that's based on Sosai's 3 principles, not just Sosai's, but traditional karate in general. Waza no kankyu, iki no chosei, chikara no kyojaku. Waza no kankyu means the timing of the technique. Iki no chosei means breath control, and chikara no kyojaku means the relative strength and softness of power, where to apply tension and power, where to apply speed and relaxation, that sort of thing. Okay, and you bring the kata to life by adding willpower. So when you first learn, don't worry about it. When you get to the next level where you need to understand how to apply the particular techniques, then the willpower comes in. And that I've related to that in my book, The Budo Karate Masayama, where I describe the different steps of the colored belt. So the white belt, white absorbs all the colors. So it's or reflects all the colors. So it's the color of potential. the next color is orange belt or red belt, and that is the color of the earth. So it's the level of stability. So when you're learning a kata as a red belt, you're primarily learning balance, stability in the stances. Okay, then you get to light blue belt, and that's Sosai mate. Rod will attest to this. Sosai was very adamant that it wasn't blue belt; it was light blue belt, because in Japanese it's mizu iro obi. So Sosai for that is because the light blue belt is where the student starts to learn fluidity, flow. So you've learned the stability of the techniques from blue belt, then you have to really work on making the movement across the floor fluid. So you're moving from one stable position to the next. That's the blue belt level. Then the yellow belt level comes in after that, and the yellow belt is where you start to put in a little bit of willpower. Okay, the yellow is the fire color of assertiveness, if you like. So you've got to be a little assertive. You can have really good kata, but if that grant and energy is missing, it won't quite be there. And then the green belt is the sensitivity level. So you start to develop sensitivity on different levels. So in our dojo, for example, green belts will start to do eyes closed movements where they're working their hands, like pushing hands in Chinese. Okay, what's Harry? Good to see you, buddy. And then brown belt is the creative level. So when Sosai says that there's no Kyokushin, there's Harry karate, Mike karate, Rod karate, Clarence karate. What he means is that creativity. But he was also very adamant that the creativity shouldn't really start till about brown belt. You know, it's when you're a yellow belt and you go, I'm doing it this way because I'm creative. Well, no, actually, you're doing it that way because you got the technique wrong. Okay, you only can be creative once you've mastered the fundamental principle of a particular technique. Then you can get a little creative with it, you know. So that's the way that you introduce the different qualities into the training as you advance through the ranks. Okay, so the third level for me, so the second level there is you understand the correct effective application of the technique. The third level is Bunkai. Okay, and that's very important in brown belt. Like I said, green belt, you start to get a little bit of sensitivity. Brown belt, you start to get a little bit of creativity. So that means that's where Bunkai start to come into play. All right, and I have a saying in the dojo: a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. I'll write that down. A block is a lock. I can type faster than this. I'm just typing with the typewriter above where I can see. Let me just come up here for a second, do it. Okay, a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. What does that mean? It means that whereas in the second level, you learn to apply the technique for what it actually is. So a punch is just a punch, a block is a block. But when you get to a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw, what that means is you realize that for example, let's look at, say you step forward, Jordan Uke. The kata has you step forward to the Jordan Uke. Well, that's a Jordan Uke. But what if the guy comes in and you need to apply that to a strike, a forearm strike under the jaw, bang, or a forearm jolt across the chest? Okay, so the block, remember, is the line. You block with a line, you strike with a point. Okay, here's the line from hand to elbow. If your fist is closed, from tetsui to elbow, that's your line of the block. When you want to turn it into a strike, you simply take the same movement and you either hit with that point or you hit with that point, boom, and then the same technique becomes an attack, you see. So a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. And you can use, in fact, I think for my Patreon family, what I'm going to do is dig that up. I think I have it on video of me doing that, and Daniel Langworthy will know, Christian will know, Daniel and even Rod, who've been to my seminars. You work that last technique out of Pinan 2 where you block down against the kick and then you block up, block down, block up, and then step through with the upper block. Well, then that block and that block combined become a lock. So there you go. A block is a lock. Okay, is a blow, is a throw, and their principles that become universal. And that's a very powerful principle that all my students, especially when they're going for black belt, they need to have a very clear understanding of it. And when they do second dan, it's a kata grade, and third dan is a bunkai application. So the grading will essentially just taking 10 or 15 moves out of the kata, and you just have to be able to apply them against different types of attack. Okay, so the third level is the bunkai. You have to break the kata down into one or two technique flows. Okay, and you apply that in the principle of a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. All right. Now the fourth level, this is my own 4 levels, not Ian Abernethy's, he's highly recommended that you read his. But for me, the 4th level is the oyo. Oyo is the actual Japanese word for application. And you have to test the technique against increasingly more realistic circumstances. So in other words, you're going against totally non-compliant opponents. So we call it application kumite. So you're actually almost doing kumite. Now, all scenarios in kata start with 1 or 2 things. It's either a grab or a strike, okay? You don't know what he's going to do. Clearly, when he breaches a certain range, then he's going for a grab, okay? But you don't know what he's going to strike. So your technique has to be able to deal with that. So that's the 4 levels there, okay? First of all, learn the correct sequence and techniques. Secondly, understand the correct and effective use of the technique, and you stick to a punch is a punch and a block is a block. Third is the bunkai, so that's where you have to then break down the kata into 1 or 2 move sequences and applying the principle of a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw. Okay. Now, some people never get past level 2, by the way. Whoops. Some people never get past level 2. And those people, that's 100% okay. We have one of my students, Aaron, great guy. Hey, Aaron, if you're listening from Tokyo. Aaron has been training with me since he was a little boy, and he's a man now. But he had a congenital heart problem, had a hole in his heart, had a number of open heart surgeries. And if you've ever seen open heart surgery, it's just like they just cut through your sternum and peel your ribs back. And but obviously, with a condition like that, and he's on certain medications, blood thinners and so on, he was no longer able to fight in Kyokushin tournaments. So he decided to go into Kata. So he's a perfect example of someone who, if he stopped at level 2 and just stopped at level 2, which is the correct application of the techniques, no one would matter. No one would care because he'd still be winning tournaments. He's won numerous Kata tournaments. What he did find was that he was able to grapple. So now he's competed. We have a grappling section in the dojo. It's a we love it. We go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, and the guys to a certain level, they compete in their divisions and they win gold medals and everything. And they're karate guys, you know, and people say, where's your Jiu-Jitsu club? We say, well, we don't actually have one. We're just a karate club who just happens to grapple, you know. And Aaron's done really well. He's over in Japan now training with one of the greatest grapplers in modern history. So, and then 4th level, Oyo. Yeah, Kyokushin Jiu-Jitsu, that's what it is. Oyo, you test that. You gradually increase the test. We have a number of ways that we do that, actually. I'm going to put my jacket on. A shout out to my buddy, Zavi. Zavi, my man. I used to train with the University of Queensland Karate Club, and Zavi gave me this jacket as a gift for my 60th birthday. And we have a number of ways we practice that. And one really good way that we work, so you have to understand the 5 ranges to understand the kata application. Okay. Now, like I said, I analyzed all of kata, all the techniques Sosai taught in his 3 books, and 67% of those techniques were in the 4th and 5th range. In other words, the inside stand-up grapple and the ground range. 67% of the techniques he taught in the 3 main Kyokushin books were grappling. Okay, and so we need to understand the 5 ranges. Once you understand the 5 ranges, what we do in the dojo is we'll play a game, and everyone's careful because the golden rule is no one gets injured. But what we'll do is during kumite, I'll just yell out, down. And at the signal of down, then everybody starts to change from doing Kyokushin style technique to they'll start to close the gap, come in, take their opponent down, get them on the ground and obey. There's Ed Parker was a famous American Kempo teacher, and he came up with a really cool saying. He said, he who hesitates meditates horizontally. And so we call it the 3-second meditation rule. So what you have to do is if you want to control somebody, you need to control them within 3 seconds on the ground. And control is very different to knocking them out. You know, sometimes you just need to control someone. I've been in situations where the primary objective is to stop someone hurting themselves, you know, and knocking them out is not going to help that. You need to seek certain concepts, and I'm going to run through some of those concepts here. There are a number of established Kata, Bunkai principles and so on. There you go. That's true, Rod. You know, when they attack from behind, you're already, like someone grabs you, you're already in range 4, you know. So you have to be able to deal with that. I noticed the kata that were being performed with bunkai, that when the bunkai was being applied, the person doing the kata tended to speed up during the bunkai. Well, realistic application requires maximal speed, I'd say, you know, or optimal speed rather than maximal. So that's, you know, the question, is it okay to speed up and so on? Well, that's what also means by waza no kankyu, the relative speed in the techniques, you know, the power stress and so on. That's what determines the speed of a technique, I think. So look, moving on, there are some established principles that are excellent starting points for your own experimentation. And first of all, I'm going to go over some principles which are widely accepted. And this is why I recommend you have a look at Ian Abernethy's book, Bunkai Jutsu. He has a section called the Rules of Bunkai. Okay. And I've actually got them here. There are 14 rules, and they're pretty good rules. They make very good sense. They're different to the rules that I do. So I'll let you find his rules. But there are some general rules first. And these are, you got to think in terms of facing a single opponent. So when you explain a technique to a white belt or a red belt or an orange belt or a blue belt, obviously what you're explaining to them is very different to when you're explaining the technique to a 4th dan or a 5th dan. Okay, so for a blue belt working, or a light blue belt, watercolored belt working on a particular kata, his place in the world right now is to learn how to get flow. So he's not going to worry too much about the depth of application. He just wants to know how to move his hips at a certain way so he can optimize power off that punch. And it is a punch to him, okay? Later on, of course, you need to go a bit deeper. But for general purposes, yeah, sure, you could say, for example, you can be in Yansu and the hands come up, and you could teach, well, let's just do spear hand to the eyes to 2 people on your side. Now, is that realistic? No, I don't think so. It's not realistic, because you need 2 people, and you go, just hang on a second, because I've got to wait for this guy. Yeah, you guys ready? Okay, pop, and you pop him in the eye. It doesn't work like that, okay? But when you change that into a different technique, then it becomes very practical, okay? So realistically, for a beginning, we think about attack from the left, defend the left, attack from the right, defend the right. But it's much better, and this is what I teach anyway, is you have to think in terms of facing a single opponent rather than a common notion of numerous opponents, okay? And that single opponent can be front, left, right, back, and that's why you start or don't start the approach to the left or to the right in the kata, not because there's multiple assailants, but because that single person generally is in front of you, and maybe you're moving off, is in front of you, or is you off to the left, and as they attack, you move off, okay? So first of all, you think in terms of dealing with a single assailant, okay? Each technique of the kata, effectively, some people argue that a kata is an entire fighting system in itself. So if the kata is effective, the first technique, bang, bang, well, that's it. The fight's over. The game's over. But if it's not technique, you have, if it's not over, well, then you have the follow on. That's the next technique. And then the next, and then the next, and then the next. And if he's a tough son of a gun, 20 techniques later. So that's your mindset with each of them. Okay. It's very, very important to think in those terms, that you're dealing with one single person. Okay. If people would really understand the violence involved in Kata, they would lose the desire to fight. I love Ian Ebenezer. Yeah, good on you, Clarence. And that's true. And this is why Unko Itosu changed the nature of Kata. He tried to popularize karate, and we're talking about 120 years ago, 115, 110 years ago. He wrote his 10 precepts in 1908. Okay, and he wanted to take it to the public, make it public in the schools. Well, he's not going to turn up at schools and go, well, what are you teaching? He says, well, what this does here is that's breaking their elbow. And this one here, that's snapping their neck. And that one here, well, we're popping the eyeball out. And here, what we do here, oh, this is really good. We come in and we go bang and we take the throat out, and the teachers are looking at him going, dude, go away. So he had to soften it. Okay. And like Clarence says there, if people really understood the dangers of the techniques that we teach, and I got called to court once as a professional witness in a murder case, and they just called me because they wanted to get the viewpoint of certain things in karate. And there are certain things, for example, they often call it the rear naked choke. It's not really a choke, it's a strangle. But that technique, which is traditionally done like this, you put your arm here and this hand comes from behind the head. Okay, people have learned 1,000 different ways to get out of this now. But the point is, this original technique, you won't find many law enforcement agencies which will allow this, because the original objective of this technique was to kill someone. You arm around their neck, arm behind their head, and then you just lie backwards and their neck just goes and snaps the way it snaps when they get hanged. Okay, so certain techniques have certain very serious consequences, and so this is why they're not taught to really do what they aim to do, and people need to understand that. So, yeah, I mean, look, we don't necessarily, and like Clarence says, people, you lose a desire to fight, but the reality is no one really wants to fight. I mean, you don't go out at night. Well, no, that's not true. Some people do go out at night looking for trouble, but generally speaking, most people don't. You can spend your life doing martial arts and never really get into confrontation, because if you've trained well, your persona, your attitude, your mindset deters any attacks. Okay, so, and like Mike says, fighting is one thing, violence is something else. I've heard some pretty scary stories over the years. I worked on tours with a friend of mine who he was a work colleague, put it that way, and I can tell you that when we get in trouble, the level of violence that man would rain upon people frightened us. You have to be prepared to do that. Like Mike says, it's one thing to fight. I had a friend who would get into a fight. People would want to pick on him because he had that sort of like come and challenge me attitude, and guys would want to fight him. So he'd go, all right, come on. He said, the fight happens on the roof. And his attitude was, we fight on the roof, and the one who wins is the one who doesn't get thrown off. Well, that was his level of violence, a little bit different. And Chrissy there mentions the lateral vascular neck restraint. Well, that's considered a potentially lethal use of force. Now, Chris is a police officer, okay? So they have to understand that the techniques they use have legal ramification. Okay, so what they call the lateral vascular neck restraint, all right, that's the rear naked, okay, because it's cutting off the blood flow, which affects the blood pressure in the brain, okay. And like Rod says, there's a big difference between self-defense, self-protection. Self-protection is all the soft skills, walking along the street, seeing a couple of not so good, happy looking people over there. Well, your self-protection tells you you're going to cross the street. I've got to uncross. I've been sitting in Cesar for the last half an hour. My legs are getting a little sore. I'll just uncross there. Okay, so all these things come into play. You see how easy it is to get off tangent with kata, because kata has that depth. And when people say they spent 3 years or 4 or 5 years on a single kata, I'm not surprised. I mean, realistically, Kyokushin has about 20 primary katas, the kick katas and the ura kata and everything, all that adds on. But for 25 years, before tournaments, Salsa even taught more, but he cut it right back, you know, and he talked about just a handful of kata, you know, and I just think some styles have too many kata. We were talking about this with Mike Clark in Okinawa and Goju. I think, did you say you have like, how many do you have in Okinawa and Goju, Mike? Was it 8 or 13? Or I know some styles have 5 and some styles have 2, you know. So that's how important it is to master, to take the depth of understanding of kata very deeply, okay? Nothing is arbitrary, everything matters. So when your hands withdraw like this, they do that for a reason. It's not just some hairy-fairy thing. And when you do the same thing, both sides, well, that's training you bilaterally, and that has ramifications, benefits that we've talked about numerous times over the year, and I go right into it in my new book too. I really think this book's going to be quite exciting. Okay. Now, I'm going to skip over Ian's 14, what he calls the rules of Bunkai. They're really good. If I had time, I'd definitely cover 13. Yeah, there you go. Like Mike has 13 kata. Well, that's counting 2 types of sanshin. In Kyokushin, you could argue we have 22 plus the ura plus the sokugi kata. So there's a lot of kata to learn, and, you know, I'm just really a little bit reticent about teaching them all the people, you know, because you say to someone says, well, can you teach me that kata? You go, well, show me the previous 7 kata that you're meant to have mastered, you know. It gets a little bit silly, okay? So what I am going to read to you now is my own, yes, it's hard stuff. That's it. Well, I call Sanshin the yang kata, and I call Tensho the yin kata. So those 2 kata balance up. Okay, so these are some further principles of my own. And there's slight variations of established principles, including Ian Abernethy's principles, very similar to his, which I introduced to students at my own dojo, okay? So these are my own principles, and if you want to write them down, that's great. I think they're really valuable. So the first one is treat the head as a 5th limb, okay? And I take that directly from wrestling and grappling. Okay, Paddy, good to see you, buddy. Thanks, mate. Sorry I'm dragging on a little bit, I know, as always. Treat the head as a 5th limb, all right? So when you use your head properly, it becomes a weapon in itself. Shuffle, look it up. He's got some great interviews there. And like he said, he's got Nick Pettis this weekend. So that's great, or this week. Good. So when you treat the head as a 5th limb, you use it as an integral part of certain kata movements, okay? Something that comes to mind, for example, is, and I've used this, and I've used it very successfully, is, if I can get up after being stays up for 30 minutes, is this movement here, boom, okay, in Pinan 3, bang, bang, there, boom. Well, I've actually used that, and the way I've used it is this. I've come in, I've approached, knocked the hand out, come behind the leg. See, that's what you're doing there, right? So I've come in behind the leg and bang. My head now goes on to the chest, okay? So now I have the push-pull principle, everything you do. Here, the kata comes around, bang, there. Well, look, if your head leads, bang, I take the leg. 2, my head goes to chest. Now I'm pulling the leg with my arm, and I'm pushing the chest with my leg, and the body tips over like that. So there is a perfect example, straight out of Pinan 3. There, here, bang, there. Bang, you take the back of the leg, boom, you drive through with your head, and they fall to the ground. Okay, so use the head as a 5th limb. Second principle is the dominant head position. We've talked about that as part of the 7 stages of Kumite. Okay, it's very, very important. dominant head position. Everything you do in kata is all about alignment, takes you to that corner. Okay, so the dominant head position is very important. And all the techniques you can do are optimized by the correct head alignment. If your head angle is off, your technique is wrong. Even I've noticed when you do makiwara, some people have some interesting ideas about makiwara, including the idea that you don't want to hit too hard. I think that's the stupidest thing in the world. But if your head position is wrong when you do makiwara, it can lead to injury. So that's how important the head is. You know, it weighs a lot. It affects everything. Okay. Kata trains you to have the correct head position at all times. This is a universal training principle, not just for kata. It means to keep your opponent in your crosshairs while you stay out of his. Okay, so that's straight out of the 7 stages of kumite mastery. The third principle, a block is a lock. Hikite is a grip. It's a pulling grip, not a retracting hand. So hikite means pulling hand, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean retracting hand. It means a pulling hand. Hiku means to pull. So when you pull, you're actually using that. You think in terms of breaking balance, for example, okay? And I think I mentioned that later. Angles take you out of the dead zone, optimize your own techniques effectively. So when you change angles in a kata, don't necessarily think you're turning to face someone. Think in terms of moving out of someone that's already facing you, moving out of their optimized range, out of their dead zone, as we call it. Okay. The next one is, I'll probably change it, but I like the sound of it. Where there's a twirl, there's a hurl. Okay. So where there's a turn, there's a throw. Where there's a twirl, there's a hurl. If you can turn in a kata, you have a throw. So once again, let's 1, 2, 3. You're in this position. And then from there, you turn. Okay. Well, we're always taught not to turn our back to our opponent. Why would you turn your back? There, like that. 2 things came to mind, and one came to me whilst I was running and I got attacked by a dog. And I used a move out of a kata and snapped the dog right in the mouth. There was a little terrier, a little staffy terrier. And I used a move in the kata and I used the kick and I kicked him in the face. And I remember the funny thing was the next day I was running again and I was a little wary because, you know, I never liked dogs. I mean, I like them, but I don't like being attacked by dogs. I got attacked when I was a kid and got bitten, so it kind of played me along, and I came to this house again, and I'm wondering that dog will be there. And as I run, the dog comes running out going, "Arr, arr," and he saw it was me, and he goes, "Arr," and he runs back in. I didn't even do anything. He ran back in the house with his tail between his legs. So he very clearly remembered that kick in the mouth that I gave him the day before. So when we're talking about a twirl is a hurl, okay? A twirl is a hurl. So here, look, I have my opponent, collar tie, arm control. I go to here, and then my hikite controls the balance. And I take them to the ground, and the turn now becomes a throw. I'm doing a whole, I've got videos that I'm setting up on that. Okay, so that's a good thing too. I have a thing called the body replacement theory. It's something I've been doing in the dojo for many years. What that means to me is if I want to throw someone to the ground, I don't throw them over there, or I don't throw them over there, or I don't throw them there. Chris will know. Chris Dunn's trained me for years. The body replacement theory says if I want to throw someone to the ground, I throw them exactly where I'm standing now. It means that I get out of the way and I optimize the power to throw them to the ground. If you try to throw someone anywhere except where you're standing, it's always a multiple of difficulty. But if you want to take someone to the ground, for example, if I'm using that same technique, 1, step through, 2, so I've got the leg, I've got the head. If I try to take them there, they'll keep hopping backwards and get away. But if I come in and here I'm standing, so now what I do is I'll start to twirl them down and they have nowhere to run. Okay, so the body replacement theory means that what you're doing is you're putting them where you currently stand. Okay, stances determine weight shift. Do you know that I think 89%, that's a big number, 89% of all stances in all kata are boiled down to 4 stances out of the 16 major stances that we use. Okay, so stance determines weight shift. Transitory stances move weight, your weight and your opponent's. So that's another rule which I'll probably get down to here. Where you have 2 hands together in a kata, so it may be here in pin hand 5, where you've gone, and then you pull the hand to here. You pull the hand back. Where your hands are coming together, you think in terms of breaking someone's balance. I'm gripping. I come here, bang, bang, pin hand 5, or hand 5, up, grip. Well, you're not going to do this movement because pulling and breaking someone else's balance. Okay? The techniques of Bunkai are not the techniques of tournaments. All right? Like I said, all the techniques also taught, 67% were illegal in tournaments. Okay? That's a lot. In fact, probably more than that even. Okay? 2 main themes are grabs and holds or strikes and kicks. So they're going to come at you with one or the other, a grab and a hold or a strike and a kick. So you need to be able to address that. And the way you address that is through the 5 ranges, which we've spoken about. Kick range, punch range, headbutt elbow range, stand-up grapple and ground range. Okay. The potential of a single technique increases with your a punch. And then they can spend enough time just getting the hang of the punch. But as you increase, when you from brown belt and above, then you start to see the possibility of that punch turning into something else. Okay, and that comes the potential of all techniques. Probably the punch isn't the best example, but an upper block, let's say, or a middle block. These techniques can go from middle block. There can be an attack, a middle block, a takedown, a control technique, a wrist hold reversal. It can be a lot of things. Okay. And your opponent is not necessarily a trained martial artist. So you need to expect the unexpected. You know, we've all sparred with white belts, and we say they're all bones and shins, and it hurts because they don't have the same fluid that we're used to in sparring. 99% of the time in a self-defense situation, you're not fighting someone who's a trained martial artist. You're actually fighting someone so they don't even know what they're doing. Okay. Remember Bratz. Bratz is your balance, relaxation, angles, timing, and speed. You have to have your Bratz right, because if you don't have Bratz right, when you try to connect the movements in the Bunkai, well then, see, Bunkai really are just a repetition of the same techniques over and over. Kata. Okay, so unless you have those kata down perfectly, you're not going to get there. Okay. Remember the 3-second meditation contemplation rule. He who hesitates meditates horizontally. Okay, so within 3 seconds of the confrontation, you need to have them in control on the ground. That's a requirement in the gradings that we do when guys are going for their particularly third dan, second dan, third dan. They're confronted with this. So we just ask someone to come and control on the ground within 3 seconds for it to be able to be considered a pass. Okay. What can you control? Well, you can only control yourself. You can't control what someone else is going to do. So you can't determine your movement based on what you think they're going to do. So you have to be able to respond. You have to be able to respond to what they're doing, which means if the technique you're doing requires them to do something specific, well, then you're in a little bit of hot water right there. The techniques you do need to be able to respond to them doing whatever they want to do. And you have no control over that, because remember, the golden rule is, would this technique work against a non-compliant opponent whose objective is to hurt me? That's it. Okay. Fantastic. I just thought of a friend of mine today, Pat McCarthy. He's a bit of a legend in the karate world too. He's written some of the greatest karate books in the world, including the Bubishi translated. He's translated a lot of books. That website there is his, and he has probably taken Bunkai and Kata application and the meaning of Kata deeper than anyone I've ever met. Okay. Now, I think we might stop there, but there are the main thing I want you to come away with is, first of all, get the kata down. And this is like what we will do is we will spend 6 months on a single kata in the dojo, and depending on deeper. So the students who are like third dan, students who are second dan going for third dan, or first dan going for second dan, obviously they'll have to be able to take a kata to a much deeper level than someone who's a blue belt. All right, so you need to apply. You need to recognize that there is, when someone says everything's in the kata, well, I don't believe that, but everything might be in the kata, everything that person is looking for at that particular time. Okay. I look, years ago, when I was 19, I read this book. In fact, I've got a copy right here. There's this. I've quoted this book over and over in this book here, The Autobiography of a Yogi. Well, I first read that when I was 19, and it spellbound me. Chrissy's read it. All my black belts are required to read it. I've quoted it numerous times in the book. But I remember when I read that, it had the most incredible, profound effect. That's the book, by the way, when Steve Jobs died, he gave everybody who came to his funeral a little gift. It was a copy of that book, and that was he had on his iPad in the Kindle. But I remember I was so overwhelmed by the depth of wisdom in the book that I lent it to a friend once, and I said, "Yeah, you might enjoy reading this." And he said, "Oh, thanks." And he read it, and when I saw him a month later, I said, "How'd you go?" He said, "I've never read so much crap in my life." You know, it's like, "Oh, scare. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming all the way from the North Sea in Norway." You know, obviously, that book held a lot of answers for me. It held no answers for him. So remember that when someone says it's all in the kata, well, they might be working on a particular principle or technique, and everything they need might be in the kata for that technique, but not everything's in the kata. Okay. A lot is in kata, a lot more than what people think. Okay. The day the grading asks you to teach them the kata that's required for the next level. It's like exactly right. And this used to happen too. And in a way, I just thought it was funny because, you know, I remember when I did my second dan in Hombu in Japan in front of Masayama. It's like the guys who are training at Hombu, some of the toughest tournament fighters, they'll be coming up going, "Oh, can you show me that kata? I need it for my grading next week." And it's like, yeah, okay. It just became a joke. And it's almost like they're like the, you know, they're a bit of a rascal sort of mindset. They're a bit of a rascal because they used to train really hard. You couldn't knock them because they hadn't been training. It just was that they spent 90% of their training time on getting strong for fighting, and kata wasn't in their brain, but they still needed it for the grading. So look, that's just a little bit of an overview of how I like to look at there's so much in it. And even the old masters used to say at the end of the day, Musashi said, you know, in his book, The Five Rings, he basically said, you know, you have to train diligently to understand these principles. And Masayama in the book, Ichigeki Hissatsu, which is a series of answer questions, Siri's gone nuts on me. In Ichigeki Hissatsu, people would ask Sosai questions and he'd give an answer, but 99 times out of 100 at the end, he'd say, look, if you just train yourself, the answers will come through your own experience. And experience is just the gathering of training, okay? And remember, Funakoshi said, a student well versed in even one technique will naturally see corresponding points in other techniques. Okay, an upper punch, lower punch, middle punch, front punch, reverse punch, all essentially the same. This is Funakoshi. Okay, the kata are essentially variations on just a handful of kata. If you truly understand a single technique, you need only observe the forms and be told the essential points of the others. You'll be able to grasp them in a relatively short time through your own experience. That's what experience is. So the 4 steps, remember, the first thing you need to do is get the sequence right, get the movements right, understand the movements. The second one is be able to apply the particular technique. So if it's a punch, know how to apply it, know what you're hitting with, where you're hitting to, how you're hitting. Waza no kankyu, okay, the relative, the speed of the technique. Chikara no kyojaku, the relative points of power stress. Iki no chosei, the breath control, knowing when to breathe out, when to breathe in. How to use the breath. Ibuki breathing is fantastic for fight conditions. There you go. He was Uchideshi. Uchideshi was also for 6 months when Masoyama died. So he was right there at the time when Sosai died. And there he goes. He's saying that he taught kata at Hombuja Senpai a week before. It's so funny that they do that to you. Oh, where's that? There it is there. Okay, look, I really love the subject. And when I have my training partner back, we're doing a whole series of Bunkai and all the kata. And when I do seminars, Rod has been there. Daniel Langworthy's been to seminars. Gare even has been to seminars with me. We do spend a lot of time and energy on understanding how to apply the techniques in a block, blow. A block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw principle, and applying good, solid applications to them. Okay, you have to keep it real. Ask yourself, would this technique work against a non-compliant opponent? Video. There's a Friends of Makiwara thing on Facebook, and I thought, oh, this looks interesting, and I put my Makiwara. I said, oh, here's my video, and you had people going, oh, you shouldn't do that. You'll hurt your phalanges, and if you're going to do that, you should wear a glove. And I'm thinking, nah. Obviously, their understanding of Makiwara training is very different to mine. I think literally some people think going that is Makiwara training. You're never going to condition your body properly to that. There's a famous Japanese karate master named Nakamura Hideo. He had a style called Kendo Kai. Nakamura Hideo, quite an amazing man. But one of his beautiful sayings, which I love, is "Kitae nukareta kobushi wa sono shunkan tekkon ni naru." The trained fist is in the instant as steel. Okay, it's true, because some styles will completely look at the same technique in a completely different way. And not just wrestling and judo, Rod. I mean, you can even look across different karate styles. Thanks, Daniel. Good to see you. Guys, I know I spoke too much today. It was meant to be a physical session, but I wanted to talk about Bunkai and Kata, because when we get going again, and I have Ben training with me doing videos and so on, we'll be looking a lot at these Kata and Bunkai. So I hope you got something out of that. Maybe you're able to take notes. Thanks, Frederick, all the way from Sweden. Really appreciate you coming on again. Daniel, you're always very loyal, and you're here every time, and I appreciate that. And also Mike. Kyle, good to see you. Kyle and I go back a long way. Thanks, guys. I hope you got something out of that. Take some notes, go back, replay it. If there's anything there, if you got any questions, 100%, drop a note, a comment underneath the video later on, and leave a message. If you haven't already subscribed, do so. Click the like, all that stuff. It really makes a difference when you share. That's the most important thing to me. I don't mind if you don't subscribe. Just share it with your friends so more and more people. Kenneth, thanks, buddy. Raj, thank you very much. I know Raj likes to train hard. Raj from Nepal. He just likes to train hard. So I'm sure he was wanting to do more training today. But anyway, you can go and finish the deck of cards, Raj. Clarence, thank you from Africa. Very good. Thank you for coming. And Paul, thank you all the way from Germany. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. We're just finishing up, and my wife's just about to come and say hello and go to work. That's my wife. There you go. Hello. Thank you. She's brought me a cup of tea. Thank you. Thanks, honey. See ya. See you later. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. If you've got any comments, questions, please leave them. Thank you.